Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jono from Gluck Orthodontics. This may be the most important video that we've ever done about Invisalign. It's how to make sure that your aligner is fitting properly and that your treatment is progressing the way that it should be. Okay, so the point of this video is to talk about how you know that your Invisalign treatment is moving the way that it should, that your aligners are fitting properly, and that you're going to get the amazing result that you want. So I'm going to distill it to a very, very simple message, and then we'll go into more detail. So the take-home message is your aligners should always fit perfectly around the tooth or the attachment, the tooth bump on the outside, with no space. And if that's the case, if every time you put your aligner in, it clicks into place and it snaps over the tooth and it grips the attachment, then the odds are very, very good, and you're wearing them all the time, the odds are very good that your treatment is progressing the way that it should and that you will receive the result that you and your orthodontist are working towards. So let me show you this. This is an example model. It's a little different because it doesn't have a lot of attachments on it, but this is just an example, and I'll bring it up really close. Of what you can see is this aligner is fitting perfectly over all of those teeth. Here's actually an attachment on one of the teeth right here, and you don't see any air gaps where the aligner isn't fitting on. And if I take it off like that, just imagine these are someone's teeth. When we go and click it into place, you can hear that little click, and you don't see any air gaps. Now, again, these teeth are relatively straight, so it's not a super complicated example, and this can get more complicated when you have patients with severely crooked teeth or their bite is off or things like that. And also when we bring attachments into play that are bonded to the teeth, this becomes more complex. So, simple example, aligner snaps in, fits perfectly over the teeth. This would happen every time you go from one aligner to the next as you proceed through. So now let's switch over. I'm going to pull up the screen on my computer and I'm going to show you a few examples of what to look for where patients have sent to us pictures of their teeth with the aligners in and the aligner does not fit perfectly, and that's how we know that they're not progressing forward. So let's take a look. Okay, so before we showed you the model and we talked about the goal of the entire Invisalign process is to make sure that the aligner always fits perfectly over the teeth and the attachments. And in our opinion, that is kind of the best guide for you as the patient to make sure that your treatment is progressing properly. So what I would like to do is show you some examples of some photos that patients have sent us over the past couple of months in which they thought that maybe one of their teeth wasn't tracking perfectly or it wasn't fitting perfectly. So let me show you some pictures and we'll kind of talk through a couple of things. So first, let's look at this patient. And if you look, I think they were concerned maybe about some airspace along this bottom front one, which I actually think it fits pretty well. If we look at the lateral incisors here and here, you can see there's really no gap along the bottom, and same thing down here. And part of what we may be seeing is a little extra plastic down here along the bottom because these two teeth are kind of curved in on each other. But for me, when I'm judging this, I'm going to look at the lateral incisors, which is an important tooth we'll discuss in just a moment. You can see that those are perfectly engaged. Same here on the canine teeth. And then if we look at the bottom, we can see that all of those are fitting well. So for me, I sent a message back to this patient and told them to keep going. Here's another example where this patient felt like maybe this lateral incisor wasn't fitting properly, and same thing here. When I look at this, again, I'm assessing, are the attachments totally seated and kind of intact in the aligner here, here, here. And even though it looks like there may be a little airspace, to me, that's probably just the thickness of the aligner. And so I think we're good to go. Wrong way. There we go. So here's another one, same thing. Question about, is everything fitting properly? When I look at this, even though I see a little bit of bowing of the aligner out along the gum line here, all of these attachments you can see are fitting nice and well into the groove on the aligner. So for me, I tell the patient, just keep going. So this is a great example of where the aligner is not fitting perfectly. And so you see here along the bottom, everything looks nice. There appears like there's a tiny bit of airspace, but if we kind of look here and here, that to me seems like the rest of the teeth are fitting. And when I look at this, I see this lateral incisor, which actually this patient put this red circle in there, which is great. But this top left lateral incisor is definitely off a 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter. Same thing on the top right lateral incisor. And then you can see a little bit of an air gap here along the front. So let me just show you this patient's plan, and we can kind of walk through what I see and why this is not surprising. So this is just a top-down view. Imagine we're looking kind of up from underneath. This is the patient's top teeth at the beginning of treatment, and you can see this tooth here. This is the top left lateral incisor and top right. Both of them are rotated compared to the central incisors, which are in pretty good alignment. The canine, that one is a little rotated. This one is pretty good. And so of all of the teeth that are likely to lose tracking during Invisalign treatment, it is the top lateral incisors here and here, which is why in our cases, almost all of them, if they are rotated, are going to have an attachment on there. So this is what it looked like at the beginning. You can see that the attachments, I've made them blue just so they're easier to see. Obviously on the patient, they're tooth colored. But if you look at this, you can see that we've decided to put an attachment on this tooth so that it gives us a little bit more of a push surface for the aligner to grip that tooth to rotate it. But going back to this picture, we talked about these teeth are the ones that are likely to lose track. So when my patient comes in at the very beginning and we get the attachments on and everything hooked up, I will make sure to be very specific, and our team is very specific, to show the patient, hey, your upper lateral incisors are rotated. That's why we have these attachments on there. Please make sure that you're diligent about watching those so that the aligner always fits perfectly. So again, this is an example where if you notice something like this is going on and you see this airspace, this is a reason to reach out to your orthodontist and let them know that something's going on. And if you can send a beautiful photo like this, then all the better for them to kind of help you decide what to do next. So here's another example. And if you look at this patient, on her left side, these teeth fit together nicely, but we also see some airspace here and some airspace here. So let's do the same thing and look at her photo from the beginning. And you can see, again, on the left side, these not too bad. It's really this upper right lateral incisor that is quite rotated. And we decided to put a smaller attachment, which we call an optimized attachment, as opposed to the more rectangular one that you saw in the previous patient. We chose to put an optimized attachment on there. And again, talk to the patient at the very beginning. This is extremely important. But when we notice that, the aligner starts looking like this, then that is what we would call off track and something that would require our attention. So I hope this video was helpful. Again, we talked about making sure your aligner fits perfectly. I showed you the example of this model where you don't see any air gaps. It clicks on, it clicks off, everything looks good. Now, based on each specific patient, this will be a little more complex or a little more mild depending on what the teeth look like and how many attachments there are. But again, take-home message, always fits perfectly with no air gaps. Aligner seats and locks in over the attachment. If you have questions, I encourage you, reach out to your orthodontist immediately when you notice something is wrong or you have a question. Where we see our patients run off course is, let's say they are on aligner number 4 and they're switching to 5, but our appointment with them isn't until after number 12. They switch to number 5, something seems off, but we don't hear from them for another 8 weeks. Well, then they've taken those 8 weeks, and if they're not on track, they've kind of veered off. So we tell all our patients, we coach them when we get started, is if you do have any questions, call us, text us, email us, send us a photo like you saw on the screen, and we can kind of walk through it and make sure everything's fitting properly. So Hope this was helpful. Any questions, send us an email, askdrgluck@gmail.com. Leave us a message in the comments. We love you. We hope it was helpful. All the best to everyone who's out there on their Invisalign journey or whatever you got going on. We hope that you end up with a beautiful smile, exactly what you wanted. We love you. Peace.